This video is going to cover the 1.1 warm-up and then notes for the quiz review. If you haven't already done so, pause the video to allow the class the opportunity to work out the warm-up, and then when you're ready, when the class is ready, hit play again on the video so that I can go over the answers. Okay, so the first question says, sketch the line with the point -1, 2 and slope 2/3. So I brought in a coordinate grid. I'm going to first plot my point, which is at -1, 2. So back 1 and up 2. And then I'm going to use my slope, which was that positive 2/3, go up 2 and to the right 3, and then do it again. Or I could go down 2 and to the left 3, either way. And then draw yourself your line. Number 2 says find the slope and the y-intercept of the equation. So if it's already in slope-intercept, just like this is, then the m, or the one attached to the x, is your slope. So here m is 5. And the y-intercept is the number that's by itself. So my y-intercept, and I'm going to write it in point form, is 0, -3. Number 3 says to find the slope given 2 points. So this is your y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to make this, these are my 1s and these are my 2s. So -12 minus a -5 becomes +5, 7 minus 6, and I get -7 over 1, which is -7. Number 4 says to find the equation of a line with slope equal to -2 and point -3. So remember that there's two ways to do this. One is plug it into y equals mx plus b, solve for the b, and then plug the b and the m back in. The other is point slope. So the point slope equation is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This is my x1, this is my y1, and then the m is the -2. So y minus a -3 becomes +3. Equals -2, x minus 2. I'm going to distribute the -2, and then I'm going to move the 3 to the other side. So also remember that unless it says otherwise, we are finding the equations of lines in slope-intercept form. So the answer should be in slope-intercept form, unless it says otherwise. Number 5 says find the equation of a line that passes through 0.34 and -2,5. So this one's a little bit different because it didn't give me the slope at the beginning, but I'm going to find it first. So y2, which is 5, minus y1, which is 4, over -2, which is my x2, minus 3, and I get 1 over -5. So my slope is -1/5. Then I can pick either of those points, so I'm just going to pick the first one, and I'm going to plug it into point slope. Y minus 4 equals -1/5 x minus 3. Distribute my -1/5 and then add the 4. So 4 over 1 becomes 20 over 5, and I'd get y equals -1/5 x plus 23/5. And the last question says, find the slope of a line A parallel to and B perpendicular to the equation from number 5. So I'm going to look at the slope here for number 5, and it is -1/5, which means that the slope of a line that's parallel to this is going to be the same, -1/5. And the slope of a line that is perpendicular to this would be the opposite reciprocal, which is +5. Okay, that's it for the warm-up. So remember that the answers to the homework are available on WebAssign. If you click back into the assignment, you'll see that now that we have passed the point that it is due, there's an opportunity to see, it says view key, and you'll be able to see the right answers. If you've got questions and you don't know how to work them out, or you didn't figure out where your mistake was, we will go over them on Tuesday in class. I know there was one question dealing with the window on the graphing calculator portion. That's not going to be on your quiz, so don't worry about that, but I will go over it when we've got time in class. Okay, so you're going to add these notes onto your warm-up, and then at the end of the video, you're going to make sure you're submitting both the warm-up and the notes all in one note to the Canvas assignment that's for today's classwork. Don't forget that, again, you're taking note, and then you're going to submit it to the Canvas assignment so you can get credit for today's classwork. So your quiz tomorrow is on R1 to 1. There's no calculators on tomorrow's quiz. So I'm going to kind of go through each section and what you should remember or what you should review from each section. So 1.1 was our plotting of points, which I warned you that's not going to be on your quiz, but you do have to know how to do them. Okay. There was scatter plots in R1. You want to know how to, plot a scatter plot, how to decipher information based on a scatter plot. You want to be able to use the distance formula to find the length of a side. So the distance formula you'll need, which is D equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And we're going to keep in mind that these should be simplified radicals. And also midpoint came up in this section. So finding the midpoint of a segment, this is x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. So these should be relatively easy questions, but be careful. Every year somebody switches the signs on either the midpoint they subtract or the distance they add, so just be really careful. The application of those things were your coordinate problems, where you were proving isosceles problems or equilateral or right triangles. So it's going to actually ask you to find the lengths of all three sides of a triangle and then classify it. If you're classifying it as isosceles, then you're showing that two sides are the same. If you're classifying it as an equilateral, all three sides are the same. And then if it's a right triangle, your a squared plus b squared has to equal c squared. Keep in mind that it can be both isosceles and right, so you definitely want to check for all three of those kinds. R2 came next, and this was all about graphing. So we started by just plotting points, if we didn't know what a graph was going to look like, or using a t-chart. Then we talked about intercepts, where if you want to look for the x-intercept, you're plugging 0 in for y, finding the corresponding x. And then the y-intercept, you're plugging 0 in for x and finding the corresponding y. And then we talked about symmetry. So to determine if something is symmetric algebraically, to see if it's symmetric to the x-axis, we change y to negative y, or we plug in negative y in place of the y, and then we simplify it. For the y-axis, we do x changes to negative x, and the origin, we change both the x to negative x and the y to negative y. And then in all three cases, it's if it equals the original after it's simplified, or if each sign is the opposite of my original equation, then it is symmetric of whatever test that was. So again, keep in mind it can be just x-axis and origin. It can be y and origin. It could be neither x or y, but it could be origin, or it could be all three, or none. Also in R2 were your circles. So remember, your equation is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where hk is your center and r is your radius. So with these, you had a couple different types of problems. One where you were given the center and the radius, you just plug those in. Probably not going to be that easy for your quiz. One where you were given the center and the radius, the center and a solution point. And those you can plug in as your hk, your x, and your y, and then solve for r. And then you were also given endpoints of the diameter. So you want to find your center by using the midpoint. And then you can either do the distance from the center to the end point, that's your radius, or you can do plugging in your center as your HK and then one of the solution point or one of the endpoints as your solution point, the way that we did this. Or the third way, which you can do, but it's risky because it's where most people make mistakes, which is find the length of the diameter. You just have to remember that if you're going to use the diameter, you need to make sure that you're dividing it by 2 before you square it back in your equation. So just be really careful with that method. That is when the most mistakes are made. Okay, then came our, 1.1, which is the first one that's in your actual textbook. And this was all the slope and the y-intercepts and stuff like that of lines. So this was all graphing lines. So obviously you need to know how to find slope. This was your y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You need to know your special cases, your x equals without a y and your y equals without an x. These types of equations. So if it's an x equals, if the x is unchanging, then this is a vertical line and slope is undefined. If it's a y equals a number, this is a horizontal line and slope is equal to 0. Then we had where you're finding the equations of line, just like on the warm-up. If you're given a point on a slope, or if you're given a point or 2 points and you have to find the slope first. And then also the relationship between parallel and perpendicular. So lines that are parallel have the same slope and perpendicular lines. I should spell it out for you. Have opposite reciprocals. And these are the questions that people miss the most on this quiz. So I'm just going to do a quick example because it wasn't on the warm-up. Let's say that I tell you to find the equation of a line. That is A, parallel, and B, so this is two-part question, perpendicular, to 2x minus 3y equals 6. That passes through -1, 7, let's just say. So the only piece of information that you get from your first equation is its slope. Remember that you can either get this into y equals mx plus b format and then find your slope that way, or you can do -a over b. That's the shortcut for the slope. A is what's in front of the x, so this is -2 over b is what's in front of the y, -3, which means the slope of my original line is 2/3. Now, once I get that, I am done with this line. Don't use any other piece of it. You don't pull out the y-intercept or anything else. All you need from it is the slope. So now we're going to look at A, which is find the equation of a line that is parallel to this line passing through point -1, 7. If it's parallel to it, then the slope is the same. So my slope is 2/3 and my point is -1, 7. And then I plug it into point slope. So y minus 7 equals 2/3. X minus a -1 is +1. Distribute the 2/3. Add your 7. Seven over 1 becomes 21 over 3. And this becomes 23 over 3. Then I want to do that whole process again, but B, where it's perpendicular, which means my slope is now the opposite reciprocal, -3/2, still passing through the point, -1, 7. So y minus 7 equals -3/2. X minus a -1, which is +1. Distribute your -3/2. And then add 7. Seven over 1 becomes 14 over 2. And I get negative 3 plus 14, which is 11 over 2. So all of the stuff that we just covered, I would go back through your warm-ups, through your notes, and through your homework to prepare for tomorrow's quiz. You can use the remaining time in class to work on the quiz review. So it says 826. It's not graded because the answers are there. R.1 to 1.1 quiz review. The worked out solutions are there, so hopefully if you have any questions, you can figure them out by the solutions. But if not, tomorrow at the beginning of class, I'll go over questions on the quiz review, and then you'll take your quiz the second half of class. Have a great day. Good luck studying, and I'll see you tomorrow.